I did my student teaching online. It was all black boxes. I was teaching high school choir, and a choir on Zoom doesn't work.
That's so painful. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it was, I mean, yeah, everyone has to be muted, and then I'm being like, okay, guys, sing with me. Zing, zing, za. Zing, zing, za. And I can sometimes see mouths moving from like the three kids with their box on, but
yeah.
everyone else is just hanging out and being sad, you know?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I do know very, very well, which is one of the reasons why, I'm now a professor at Indiana State working with future teachers, trying to prep them for the classroom. And it's so hard for me to explain to a lot of colleagues about what it was really like to teach during the pandemic and what it was like for us to talk to little black boxes and then maybe have one or two outgoing kids that would actually turn their cameras on and make eye contact. And a lot of times that had less to do with the personality of the kid and more to do with what their home life looked like, and what the situation was for them. I mean, you took that experience and now you're, I think doing something so cool and also really cool for the kids that you worked with, where they can see that as an option. Like I don't think that most people would take an option like what you're doing and be like, "Oh yes, I shall get a boat and I shall sail." But realistically, like yes, you could, right? Like you don't have to go to a university. You could in fact like get a boat and learn how to spearfish.
You could just go to sea. You could just go to sea. Like, this first year of teaching is really difficult. What if I went to sea?
But like you did and are, and it's incredible. And I think because you are sharing these experiences on Instagram and on TikTok, I think it is also really encouraging for educators to think about like, okay, outside the world of teaching, like, because for a lot of us, myself included, literally my name on Instagram is educator Andrea. Like so much of our identity is tied up in that, right? Like who you are and you live, breathe, eat, like caring for your students.
It's so difficult. And I think, there's so many things to say right now. Like the hardest thing about teaching in the pandemic is not like, I think for that people struggle when they look in as what we were doing. It's like, oh, you just sit at home all day and you just like talk to black boxes. That looks way easier than what you were doing. The hardest part was that the care for the students was still there, even more so because we knew our students were struggling. And then not actually being able to serve the students was the hard part. And then for teachers that are seeing what I'm doing and then realizing, oh, this looks like perhaps a better, I speak so carefully about this because I don't want to trigger an exodus of educators from teaching, like I don't believe that all the teachers should quit, like at all. Like, but from my experience, I felt like Seattle Public Schools had created such a comfortable prison for me. It's good healthcare, good retirement. In Seattle Public Schools, good pay. Like I can complain till the cows come home about the district, but we were compensated very well. Like they make it to me, it felt like a very comfortable prison. And I mean, I didn't have any windows in my classroom. It was dark. It was really dark. And it makes it really difficult to be brave. And there's a borderline stigma against educators leaving the classroom. It's like, because like our profession is so noble. It's such an honorable profession. And to even think about leaving and then to speak that out into the world and say, oh, I'm thinking about leaving education. It in some ways can
gasp,
feel
right?
Yeah, there's a collective gasp. It can feel like a betrayal. It can feel like a betrayal to your students. It can feel like a betrayal to your allies, your colleagues. It feels like a betrayal sometimes to your family if they're relying on that income. It is such an emotionally charged profession, such an emotionally charged decision. I mean, I remember it was a singular moment where I realized that I was leaving education for the time being. And I was sitting on a beach when I was diagnosed with COVID. I didn't really have any symptoms, but I couldn't go to school because I tested positive. And the only way, and I was sitting on a beach in Seattle, and I broke down into a huge amount of tears and I just wept and wept and wept for hours sitting on this beach, looking at the water. realizing that everything was different now.
Yeah.
After I had that experience, and it took a week of being removed from the environment, a week of being away from the students, a week from being away from the colleagues, a week from being away from the culture, for me to
Yeah.
realize how unhappy I was, how unhealthy I was, and unhealthy primarily, how unhealthy
Yeah.
I was, and that if I wanted to have just any sort of quality of life, that I needed to make a change fast. And yeah, I set sail like 7 months after that decision.
That's incredible. Yeah. And I think that you bring up a good point because you pointed out that you had, great, the income was good and all that. And I think that there's a real misconception when people say, like, we need to fund education, and they think that all we're saying is pay teachers more. And there are places that should, but I think that there's a huge misconception that we're not just saying that. We're saying 140 kids in one choir class or one orchestra or whatever. Like, that's not
130,
acceptable. Yeah, like
No,
we can't do that. Like,
no, at all. And and I was teaching in Washington Middle School, which is a really, it's Title I, very underserved population. Has one of the highest rates of students of color in the district, historically underserved. It's the oldest building in Seattle Public Schools, which is like 113 schools. And we didn't get a dime from the district for funding the program. So everything, all of our instruments, all of the lessons, all of festival fees, all field trip fees, all uniforms, was all funded by parents.
Which in a district like that in particular puts an undue burden on the families that are in that community. And I think that like that is the thing that I try and communicate to people when I'm like, no, teachers, when teachers are asking for funding, yes, like the income is a piece of that, because we don't want to be stressing about having to work a second job in addition to teaching and all of that. But also we want to have resources for our students to be successful and our class sizes to be manageable. Like one of the main things that I've seen in so many studies is one of the greatest predictor of student academic success is having manageable class sizes. And I taught at a district in San Diego County where I had like 42, 43 kids in a freshman English class. Like, do we really think that I'm going to be assigning 5-page research papers that could potentially prepare them if they wanted to go to college to write college papers? That'd be great. I don't have enough hours, and I refuse to do the freedom writers thing where I destroy my personal life so that one group of students can be successful. And I feel like there was, especially I'd say like 10 years ago when I first started teaching, very much a pressure that like, if you're unwilling to sacrifice your personal relationships, then you're not teaching hard enough. And that's just such a toxic, horrible thing to expect of any profession. But like you said, there's so much pressure on teachers not to leave. And if you do leave, then it's looked down upon in a way that like no other profession that I can think of does that, where it's like, wow, you're not being an electrician anymore? Do you not love wires still? Like,
I know. It's an industrial level of gaslighting.
Thank you so much for watching. Want more of Those Who Can't Do in your life? Well, you can watch the full episode right now. Just click on that little box over there. You see it? Right down there? There it is. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe. Okay, bye.